everyone, and welcome to the Art of Creation show, where we look at how choice creates, that choice creates, and different possibilities for creating a life and a living that can actually work for you. How does it get any better than that? I'm your host, Rebecca Boswell, and today I'm joined by, it's not deja vu. If you guys are familiar with episode 1, this is not a rerun. Do not adjust your dial. Yay, I know, it's so exciting. We are joined today by co-founder of this show, Frank Fradella, who has moved on to even greater things. One of the big questions that we asked in that first season is, how will you out-create yourself over the next year? And so a year later, Frank has been out-creating himself, and so what better thing for us than to pull him onto the show and see what he has to gift all of us. So Frank, I'm so excited to have you.
Literal goosebumps all over my body right now. I'm so excited to be here. I can't.
Yay! Awesome. Yeah. So Frank, for those of you who are not familiar with Frank is a master of many, many things. He is an artist by every stretch of the imagination and beyond. Videographer, photographer, director, editor, writer. He is also a visual artist, having written also the Complete Idiot's Guide to drawing. So that's out there. And films to his name, all kinds of amazing things. And also now to include his fun exploration into the world of empowerment and consciousness, and bringing all of that and all the tools from that playground to a special population that is near and dear to your heart. So tell us about this big creation that you have, and what you've been playing with, and we will launch into our episodes. The geek will inherit the earth.
The geeks will inherit the earth. I believe that, I do, because and here's why. It's because I think that we already have the tools. Like as I was going through my entire training with Access and becoming a facilitator and all of that, like I was hearing things that I'd heard before, and I just there were so many things that I was like, wait, I've heard this before. I've heard this, and I get this. And then when I started to put it through this lens of geekdom, of science fiction and fantasy and so on and so forth, like the first time I heard the distractor implants, right? Blame, shame, regret, fury, hate, all of those things. And I was like, oh, so you mean all the things that would lead to the dark side of the Force?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's like, this is exactly what Yoda would have said to Luke, right? Blame, shame, regret, fear, jealousy, hate, love, all of these things are distractor implants. And I'm like, right, the things that will disqualify you from being a Jedi. I totally get that. Boom, let's move on. Right? You didn't have to drive that home to me. You didn't have to explain it to me. Science fiction had already done that.
Yeah.
So I was like, how cool is this? So that's what I'm doing with the Geek's Guide to Empowerment. I'm actually kind of using this lens to go through all of the tools that we've had at our disposal, that we've created our lives with, and I'm giving them to people that I think have been underrepresented in the realm of consciousness. And I want these people to have the tools because they're my peeps, and it's like, look, it's awesome, I'm living in Italy and stuff, right? It's amazing.
Well, and the irony is, you're actually talking about a population that's had a lot of this information from the get-go, and now just sort of applying this different way of looking at it, kind of giving them access to the tools that are right in front of them and have been.
Okay, I'm so glad you brought this up, because the pinned post on the Geek's Guide to Empowerment page is about this very thing, right? It's about how you've had the tools all along and you just didn't know it yet. Yeah. And there's in Mad Max 3 Beyond Thunderdome, where Max finds these kids living in an oasis in this wasteland of a desert, and there's this kid who's walking around with this strange looking walking stick, and they've got these wind chimes, except the walking stick was a rifle and the wind chimes were bullets. So they had these tools at their disposal, and they literally had no idea what they had in their hands.
Yeah.
And then Max comes along and he just takes off the wind chimes and loads the gun, and bam! Blows their mind, right? Because they had no idea what they had already in their hands.
Yeah.
And for me, that's what I'm trying to do every day. I'm trying to be Max, you know,
Yeah.
not in a kind of post Max Mel Gibson kind of, we don't like Mel Gibson anymore kind of way, but in the pre Mad Max Mel Gibson
Yeah.
kind of way. Hey, Heather.
And with way better hair.
I have
Yeah.
way better beard.
Exactly. That's included. So,
So, hey, I
yeah.
wanted to say something before we move on here and get too
Yeah.
far away from the intro.
Sure.
You had mentioned in my intro when you given me this lovely thing that I just want to record and play on a loop forever. You said that I went on to better things. I would say that I went on to different things. You've got an amazing show here. You've done such wonderful things with it, and I don't think anything that I've done has outcreated you. I've just created differently than you, and I'm just so proud to see where we've both grown from the time that we started to where we've come, and I think you're doing an amazing job.
Oh, thank you. This is not a tearjerker show, Frank. You're gonna make my mascara run. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you, honey. That is so sweet of you. And yeah, you know, it really, the energy of the show really was created as a co-creation, and it's fun to see what we continue to create and how we continue to evolve and now create ourselves, and how much being an invitation to whomever wants to play, you know, really how that's the target. So I love this, that it's like, you know, you're like my peeps, and I love watching, you know, to, you know, give some of the love back. You know, I really love watching in the communities that you've built with this, and, you know, like the yeses, you know, like when you post things and it's like, you know, the people that now have a voice in this conversation that never knew that they were actually invited to participate, and all of a sudden, you know, you're using archetypes, you know, you're using like superheroes from the Marvel series, right? Or you're using characters from, not characters, but you're these like huge personalities from mythology, whether it's from Greek, Roman, Norse mythology, right? Like you're taking these epic stories, these epic personalities, and you're bringing it into this arena where people who are familiar with that are able to suddenly be like, oh my gosh, like, yes, I love this, and I can actually learn this whole other thing from it that I never even knew it was there, So I just love seeing where people are like, oh my gosh, yes, this, more, and there's like this hunger and this thirst, where people are just like, you know, let's suck that marrow from the bone. Like, I know that's an expression that you use, but they're like asking, they're like, more marrow, please. So that's really been fun. So let's, I know that there are 9, well, let me back up. So the Geek's Guide to Empowerment. I know that there is, you know, there is a program that you do over 6 weeks, and you have distilled 9 really dynamic and powerful tools that you use with everyone who chooses to go on that journey. And I was wondering, without giving it all away, I was wondering if we could have a little conversation, if you could share some of these tools with us, so that we can, you know, get a taste of what that journey is like.
Yeah. Well, first, I'm going to let you in a little secret. We say that there's these 9 life-altering tools in the program, but as you're going through the program, I mean, if you listening to them, knowing the tools, you'll be like, that's another tool right there. That's 4 tools. There's 7 tools in this module alone. Like, I say that there's 7 tools, 9 modules, but there's like 47 tools in this thing, and like it's just chock-a-block full of tools.
Right. And then you realize too, just like every choice is a tool, and if you really started counting, you'd be boggled, right?
Yeah, right. Counting at 9, I was done.
Cool. Well, 9 sounds really good.
Well, thanks. So, yeah, so here's something that, you know, everybody knows who Batman is. And, you know, my Batman's the poster child for like kind of broody angst in comics and films and everything. But for me, he's the poster child for something we would call causal incarceration. So, he is the way he is because of something, because his parents were murdered in front of him. Every choice that he makes in his life has to align and agree with that statement. I am this way because my parents were in front of me.
Yeah.
Now, says that he wants to save Gotham City, but Bruce Wayne's a billionaire. If he actually wanted to save Gotham City, he could employ more people, do social reforms. He could like revamp major parts of the city and lift people out of poverty. But instead, he dresses up in pajamas and punches people in the mouth one at a time. Right?
Well, it makes for a better show.
Right. Well, it's, yeah, you have to look at it from this point of view that like what he actually wants to do is to continue to perpetuate this causal incarceration, right?
Yeah.
I am this way because, and I want to punish the people who made me feel bad. That's literally all he's doing.
Yeah,
right?
and continues to punish himself as well. Exactly.
Right. You never actually evolve past your causal incarceration. Right? Because if it doesn't align with that statement that I am this tragic figure, I am an orphan, I have no friends, I have no family because of, right? Once you go into that, you're locked in. You're literally creating a prison out of that point of view, right? And that's where Batman lives. They had this comic book episode, this comic book issue once where he died. Bruce Wayne died, and he was brought back to life through something called the Lazarus Pit. And when he came back, he didn't have any of his memories. And Alfred let him be. Alfred just let him go off and live a separate life. And he went off and he had like friends and a girlfriend, and he was happy. He was capable of being happy because he wasn't constantly trying to prove how tragically grim he was because of this thing that had happened to him.
Yeah.
And once you realize that Batman is who he is because of a point of view, literally, that's it, right? It's mind-blowing how that can free you when you start to look at what if my future didn't have anything to do with my past.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And
yeah.
like, for me, that was a game changer.
Well, and how much do we do that? How much do we sort of create this identity based on whatever we decided is most important, right? And then like you have to create everything around that. Like I can't do that because it doesn't match. I have to do this because otherwise it doesn't fit, or I don't fit, or it may be too different. And how much does that actually impede what we're able to create, what we're able to choose, the choices that we make or that we're even aware of?
Right, and how many times do we continue to be that?
Yeah.
Because of other people. Because there's this kind of inner voice that would be like, it's going to make people uncomfortable if I change too radically, or if I, if I get too big, if I expand too much, if I kind of, right? That's why Clark Kent wears glasses and pretends not to be Superman.
Yeah.
Right? Like literally, you want a lesson in being you? Look at Superman. Superman is being Superman. Superman is Kal-El. That's who he is. He's pretending to be Clark Kent.
Yes.
Right? But like you being you is this. Right? That's you being you. Right?
Yeah.
Right? That's you right?
Yeah.
That's you being you. Right? You pretending to be small for other people is you being Clark Kent.
Yeah.
Right? Now I say that to geeks and they get that immediately, right? I don't have to explain what being you is anymore because that's the example they understand. That's why the geeks get this so quickly, and that's why I'm so excited to work with them. Yeah.
So before we even move on, time out on the geek thing. So like, because like I wonder like, how many people are like, yes, I'm a geek, right? Because there's lots of that. But then there's also like, how many closet geeks do we have out there? And like, how many of us are geeks and don't even know it? So like, for the sake of the show today, for the episode, whatever you have decided about what a geek is, let's just dispel that and let's just play in this space of like, what if a geek is really just someone who's interested in learning and, and interested in all the possibilities that exist here in this realm of play.
Right. So there are so many people who are in the Geeks Guide to Empowerment group on Facebook that don't self-identify as geeks.
Yeah.
A lot of people join that group because they wanted to be able to speak to their geeks better, and wanted to have to bring them the tools that they knew from Access.
Yeah.
But what they're finding is, oh my God, I love Thor.
Yeah,
right? Like,
I am a geek.
The Avengers films, like I just saw Black Panther, and all of a sudden the group starts talking about, did you see Black Panther yet? Right, and people get so excited about this because you are a geek. You're geeking out right now. It's happening. I'm watching it happen, right? there's this thing which, for me, to be a geek is to have an unabashed joy and love for something, right? I don't care if it's history, right? Like I geek out over the battle at Thermopylae with the 300 Spartans, right? I'm a geek for history, but I'm
Yeah.
also a geek for superheroes, and I'm a geek for Alexander the Great, and I'm a geek for Greek mythology. Like I'm a geek for
Yeah.
all of these things.
Yeah.
It's not just comic books and video games, right? So it's like,
It's
you know,
whatever you have, ever you just are like, ooh, let
yeah,
me have more, have more.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Give
yeah,
me
yeah.
more. The joie de vivre, the exuberant expression of life.
So to be a geek for me is to be a fan of something, right? And you know, fandom we've turned into a thing because, like, you know, it's like the kingdom of being a fan.
Yeah.
But there is, but fan, people forget, is short for fanatic. Like people who love something unreasonably, right? And like that's me to a T. Like that's the only way I love anything is unreasonable. Like I don't like I just
Yeah. Just for me, just for fun.
yeah, Facebook showed me like you've liked 300 posts and you've loved 4,000 posts. I'm like, yeah, because I don't like anything, right? Like I love everything, right? Like if I don't love your shit, I'm not even gonna click the button. But if I like your shit, man, I love it. I will love all.
Yeah, that's why there's no meh button.
Right. So yeah, super cool, man.
So awesome. Okay, so we already like there are two huge mind-blowing, life-blowing possibilities that you just introduced to us in just these first few minutes, right? About where our past, when we hold on to it, our past can create who we are now and what we perpetuate in the future, right? So, do we really want to be like Batman? And what else can we learn from him? And then this Superman, you know, this is amazing of like, you know, you are you, and it's only when you're hiding you that you're actually trying to be something that's not you.
Right. Yeah. Well,
Super cool.
it's yeah, right. It's that playing small thing, right? It's what I call playing Smallville, right?
Yeah.
That thing not willing to step into everything that you can be and everything that you'd like to choose because honestly, you're afraid of making other people uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really what it boils down to for me. You know, when I
Yeah.
look at it, it's
Yeah.
boiling down to really making other people uncomfortable because you don't want to face that judgment. You
Yeah.
know, there's that thing in Access we talk about the tall poppy always gets cut down, you know?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I mean that's why Clark plays small. That's why his parents didn't let him play football back in Kansas, you know, back in Smallville.
Josephine is just saying, Frank, you're like a brother from another mother. So she's digging what you're putting down.
I love you, baby. Thank
Cool. So now I know you also play a lot with mythology. Right now you're playing. You have a couple projects that you're playing with from Norse mythology. I know that's a huge interest of yours. Before we move to that, though, is there anything else that we really, really need to know from the superhero set?
Wow. Hey, Jill Fletcher Douglas.
Hey, hi.
So you know what? I'm going to use this as a bridge because
Okay.
what people know about Thor is mostly from the movies.
Okay. Cool.
And Thor in the movies, Thor in the comic books, and Thor in Norse mythology are three different people. Uh, so there's this thing that they introduced in the comics, and they took it into the movies, where only someone who is worthy can pick up Thor's hammer. So it's not a matter of strength. The hammer is incredibly heavy anyway, but only someone who is worthy can pick up the hammer. Now that's an enchantment that was placed onto the hammer by Odin. And one of the first things that I teach you in this course, as a matter of fact, it's in the first module, is that Thor is literally carrying around a manifestation of his father's judgment.
Wow, that is heavy.
Right, that's why it's so fucking heavy, right? Excuse my language, right? But that's why it's so heavy. Because like everything that Thor has to be to lift that hammer is wrapped up in not what he believes, but it's what his father believes, right? And so when we think about worthiness, people immediately attach their own values to that. But I asked the question, well, what if it's Odin who put the enchantment on the hammer and it's him who decides what's worthy? Odin is an ancient Viking who used to like rape and pillage and massacre people, right? So like, I mean, like, what are his values, right? Like, and what, like, is Thor only able to lift the hammer because he's a good defender of Asgard and he's willing to kill with impunity, right? Like, literally, you don't know, but all we do know is that Thor is literally only allowed to lift the hammer when he's a good boy, right? Like, when he does what his father wants. So here's where I'll segue into the stuff that I'm doing now, this new webcomic that I'm writing and illustrating called For Better or Norse, where I play with the lives of Thor and Loki and Sif and a bunch of other people when they were teenagers. So before Thor gets his hammer, when he's still kind of, high, before he stops aging, like the gods at some point just kind of stay eternally young.
Yeah.
So here's Thor at 16, and Loki's half frost giant, and Thor doesn't like frost giants as a rule. So how much needling does Loki take from Thor his whole life that ultimately leads to him creating Ragnarok, the end of the world, millennia later, right? How much judgment is Loki being subjected to on a daily basis because he's an outsider, because he's different, because he's not pure Asgardian, because he's a half-breed, because he's right? So, I mean, there's all of these things where I started to look at Loki is the key to creating the end of the world in Norse mythology. But how much of that could have been done away with if he'd been loved and accepted and acknowledged just for who he is?
Yeah.
And that's just blowing my mind. So I wanted to do this kind of ongoing webcomic where you see, like, it's not one thing. It wasn't one event, right? It was thousands of years of constantly being met with this judgment from other Asgardians. From Thor having to live up to his father's judgment, right? As the protector of all of Asgard. Like, everybody is living into their roles. And how much does that shape everybody's destiny by not choosing for themselves, but by living at the effective judgment of other people?
Wow.
Yeah, and it just turns out that Norse mythology has turned to be ripe for the plea.
Yeah. Cool. And so you're also now bringing this into another audience where now this conversation can also be fun for the younger set, for kids.
Oh my gosh. So, all right. So full geek confession, full on geek confession. I started playing Dungeons and Dragons when I was like 10 years old. And I played some kind of tabletop role-playing game for decades, weekly, with friends. There was a group of 5 of us who used to play this Marvel superheroes role-playing game where we'd play superheroes. And it was all dice and paper and just our imagination, and the GM would describe what was happening and you'd have to choose what to do, right? And as I started thinking about this, just designing this kind of like quick, really simple rule set for like something that a 5-year-old could play, because my kids are 5, it's like, what can I play with them? And I realized that these are games about choice.
Yeah.
Right? You present them with an obstacle, and what I've done, instead of going the traditional route where you like every character has these attributes where they're this strong and this smart and this charismatic and they have this kind of stamina, and
right, they're always the same no matter what the situation.
Right. Thor is this strong always.
Yeah.
Right. Instead, what I gave everybody in the game was the same 5 problem-solving abilities. Right. You can solve your problem through force, through guile, through wit, through trickery, through magic, right? And so there's no one right way to do it, right? If I tell you have to pick something up, that's not necessarily a strength feat, right? That could be an ingenuity feat where somebody just gets a log and a stone and a lever and like lifts it. I don't care how you get it done. You choose how you want to solve that problem. And that's what I've been teaching my kids, right? To look at things as, how do you solve that problem? And it's literally just changing the way they think about things, right? It's like, how do I solve that, right? I'm not strong enough to do this, but am I smart enough? Am I clever enough? What can I do to solve that problem? And watching it change their world and how they approach things at 5 is blowing my mind.
So have you noticed when you're out in the world and not playing the role-playing game, do you notice where they refer back to the role-playing game out in everyday life?
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. Right. So
Yeah.
like Caspian will do something and like he realizes that he's been clever, right? And like the way that I represent all of these attributes in the game is by animals. So Force is a polar bear, and
Uh-huh.
wolves have a good skill level, and rams are very tenacious, and foxes are tricky. They're clever. So when Caspian realizes that he's been extra smart at something, he'll say like a fox, like a fox, right? And it's like other people hearing that from the outside don't realize that he's referring to the game that we've invented, and that this is changing his reality because like he sees the capacities within himself where like he's capable of doing almost anything he puts his mind to. I don't know if you saw this morning on Facebook, right? We just got this milk frother so we can make cappuccinos at home. I hadn't made one yet. But I'm in bed and he comes in to cuddle with me and we were laying there for a little while. I said, I think I'm going to go try and make a cappuccino. Because in my head, I've never done this before with this particular equipment. I'm going to try and go make a cappuccino. I use the word try, which is the wrong thing to say around Caspian. Because Caspian went full Yoda on me, right? Caspian was like, we don't, hey, like literally got in my face. He's like, hey, we don't try, we do, right?
Yeah.
Because he's heard me, right? Because like this is the geek culture that he's growing up in, right?
I love it. Yeah.
Right? Caspian went full Yoda on me, right? Doesn't realize where that comes from yet. Has no idea. One day I'll show him that film and he'll think they're quoting me, right? And
Yes. Well, aren't they? So I love this. So Frank, this comic strip that you have that deals with the Guardian characters, and then also this role-playing game. Now, are these things that are just for you and your kids, or are these things that are going to also be available for viewers here, for people who are interested in playing with those too?
Sure. Well, actually, I'm inviting people into the entire creative process on this. So I have a Patreon page, patreon.com/Frank Fradella. And
Okay.
I'm posting the entire creative process there. I do my early sketches, and people who are patrons have watched me start off with, Thor at 3 years old. And I realized that wasn't a good fit. Thor at 10, not quite right either. I'm trying different, like authentic Viking hairstyles, not quite right. So you see this concept stage as I go into these things, and like the role-playing game just kind of sparked out of that. And then like I've invited people to help me name this thing. The name for Better or Norse is actually from somebody who's a patron. Who I mean, people get to contribute to this, and so this will actually be a webcomic that the first strip goes live a week from today, next Friday.
Ooh, exciting.
Yeah. So it goes live on Friday for patrons, and then Monday for everybody else. So if you want to be a patron, go do that. I'd love to have you on board.
Cool. So, and we will, just for everybody who is curious about that, we will have that link in the show notes. So when this gets uploaded to YouTube and there's the full show notes, the links will be in there. So if you're worried, take a deep breath, relax. You will get to be a part of that co-creation. Cool. So that's going to be up. And then what about the role-playing game?
The role-playing game, right now in these 10 seconds, my fervent desire actually is to give it away for free. Like I want to create this thing because I've made this as simple as I can make it.
Yeah.
It's like a two pages of rules. You need one 6-sided die, and I want to make custom dice for this with the animal heads on it, but you don't need it. You can play with any 6-sided die, and I'll show you how. But like literally, you can download this free sheet that I've designed, download the rules, and play with your kids today, right now.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so that's going to be up on the Patreon page for anybody who wants to come and see that. The rules, I'm not done with the layout yet, but everything is written and it's coming soon.
Okay, cool. So when someone becomes a patron, then they get access to all the information on the rollout and how to get all the materials and et cetera.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
$2.
$2.
Hear that?
What a bargain.
That guy honked his horn, like, $2, get out of here.
He's like, get out of town with your $2. Awesome. Cool. So before we move on, does anybody watching in this 10 seconds have any questions about any of this, or we'll just we'll allow that to trickle in, and so okay, so what else? So tell us more about these tools that that allow us to totally geek out in the world, be totally empowered, and you know, to inherit the earth ultimately, which is, of course, you know, probably our target, right? As superhero geeks of the world.
Yeah. You know what? The coolest thing for me is the people in the group. I love them all because they're all kind of relentlessly positive about geekdom
Cool.
the way I am. You know,
Cool.
it's very. You know what? It's really easy for geeks to get up in each other's face about stuff like Star Wars is the best, Star Trek is the best. What are you, crazy? Right? And like immediately, bam, right? And like our group is just kind of, everybody in that group is just totally down with this kind of thing. Like, why not both? Right? Like, they're both awesome. They can both
Yeah.
be awesome. I'm totally cool with that. Right? So I love that there's not a lot of conflict in this group. There are
Yeah.
times when I first started when I would present a tool and I would use a show or a movie or a character as a kind of, you know, backdrop for this thing, the way I did with Batman, right?
Yeah.
A hardcore Batman fan would jump in there and go, "You don't know anything about Bruce's life, man. He suffered." And I'm like, "Whoa, dude, not the conversation we're having, but I appreciate your
Yeah.
wow."
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so
Well, and that's part of knowing, like, what is the target of this conversation, right? Is it, I mean, there are so many forums for that, right? I know better than you, listen to my point of view, let me be right, and, carry that torch of causal incarceration myself too. Or there's this thing of like, oh, okay, so here's this thing that offers enjoyment, and hey, if we take it one step further, what else could we become aware of, and how can it actually create greater in our lives? I mean, sure, why not?
so my process, like when I post nearly daily into the Geeks Guy, my process is like, I can't live a day without having some kind of geek content cross my path. Like it's in my Facebook feed, it's in my daily life. Like I just see it everywhere. So every time I see something now, I ask the question, what was the lesson in this that I didn't get the first time?
Yes, and that's exactly addressing Dennis's. Thank you, Dennis, for your post there. And I'm guessing that you did read it, Frank, real quick.
No, I did. Yeah.
Oh, well, Dennis, basically, what he's sharing here is, science fiction and these stories are really some of the last places that are really also telling a story with some sort of a lesson or a message at the end. And what he's saying is that, it's easier to kind of get these themes and these lessons when you're used to your stories having that already built in. So that plays exactly into what you're saying.
Yeah.
He's saying, what do you know?
Dennis, by the way, is the one who came up with the name for Better or Norse. Thank you, Dennis.
Awesome, Dennis.
Brilliant.
Awesome.
Brilliant. Round of applause.
Cool.
So that kind of thing is super cool for me because, like, I don't want people to ever think that, like, I got it the first time through. Like, when I watched The Matrix for the first time, I wasn't thinking, oh, your point of view creates your reality. Right? Like, that wasn't my thought process the first time I saw The Matrix, right?
Yeah.
I came out of there and I was blown away away by it. And then 20 years later, I start digging into the tools of access, and they're like, your point of view creates your reality. And there are some people who are going like, what does that mean? Your point of view creates your reality. And I'm going, oh, it's The Matrix. I totally get that.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's kind of head trippy when you like going back and watching The Matrix, and it's like, man, I got to write all this stuff down. And then I'm like, oh wait, it has all been written down. But yeah, how did I watch it so many times and, not really get it? How cute are we?
So Dr. Dane here loves, he's got this great book called Being You, Changing the World, right?
Yeah.
And again, the Being You class was actually my introduction to access. And there was so much about that when I first heard it, I was like, I don't know what that means, being you and changing the world, right? What does that mean? But then as I began to understand it, I now tell people about that by bringing them into the Matrix sequel, Matrix Reloaded. So in the first Matrix film, Morpheus gets his butt kicked by an agent, right? Agent Smith. Just gets completely owned. And he had told Neo, Like, listen, Neo, I'm not going to lie to you. Every man or woman ever who has stood their ground against an agent, every single one of them has died. Nobody wins against an agent. Nobody. But where they failed, you'll succeed because you're the one. And Morpheus believes that, right? He believes that only somebody who is the one could do that. So we watch him get his ass kicked by Agent Smith in the first film. But then in the second film, we watch Morpheus face an upgraded agent on top of a moving truck, moving at high speed through traffic, and he holds his own.
Yeah.
And the difference is that somebody else showed him what was possible.
Yeah.
Right? Neo, just by being Neo, right, became the invitation for Morpheus to step into a different space.
That's awesome.
Right? And this isn't science fiction, right? This is true. For thousands of years, mankind has been running around on foot.
The 4-minute mile.
The 4-minute
running.
John Landy, 1954, right? This blows me away, right?
Yeah.
Because this is exactly what it is. It's this thing where, like, for thousands of years, everybody thought you couldn't run a 4-minute mile.
Yeah.
And then in 1954, John Landy does it, and a month later, John Bannister does it.
Yeah.
Right? And now it's just the standard. Everybody runs
now, like in high school, they do it.
I'm going to go run a 4-minute mile right after this talk, right? It's just like, you know, while sipping cappuccino and doing my taxes, like it's no big deal anymore. Right? So I mean, like, I just love that, like, when you are authentically being you, you know, when you take off the glasses and you become who you're really supposed to be, when you're willing to show up like that, you know, Superman is actually an immigrant in America story. Right? That's what, right? It's how does he deal with the possible prejudice and fear that he has from people by being an alien, right? Even when he's only come to help, right? And his solution to that, unfortunately, is to hide, right? To make himself small. And there's a lesson to be learned there, you know? But I mean, if you only look at Superman as somebody who can lift stuff and who, like, you know, doesn't like kryptonite, you're missing the point, right? There's so much more here to be gained. Kimberly Bishop in the house. How you doing?
Oh, cool. Yeah. So I didn't even see. Nice. So, so awesome. So what else do, you know, do we absolutely want to know about this before we wrap up today? What else, if there was nothing else that we received from this episode today, what would that be?
So for the past year, I've been working on this Geeks Guide program, using all the tools that I've been creating and conversations just like this into a really focused, guided course that'll take you from point A to point B. Because Access, I think is wonderful, but Access's message about, you know, just having choice and just choose all the time, and like, it's kind of like going to the gym and there's like this endless row of free weights and machines, and it's just like, you have total choice, but for somebody who doesn't know how to choose yet, that's not always the biggest contribution. So I wanted to create something that for somebody who'd never been in the empowerment gym before, right? Like, here's where you start. We're going to get on the treadmill for 5 minutes. It's going to be fine. It's going to be okay. And then from there, we're going to do some light free weights. We're going to warm the body, right? And it's just like, that's what the program is. And I've been working on it for months, and it actually goes live to our early adopters today, and goes to the general public on Monday. So people can get
Oh my goodness. I mean, this is really your time, Frank. I mean, you have all of these things right now coming out. There's this bubbling of creation. It's pretty exciting. And that everybody that's watching now and who will be watching in the future, that they can participate and be on that, you know, be on that journey right from the beginning. Yeah,
I'm so grateful to everybody who's been on the journey all along, you know. Because when I was the Geeks Guide, you know, I did the Geeks Guide for me because, like, for me, this was a repository of, like, awarenesses that I had and observations that I had about where the tools of consciousness aligned with stuff I'd already heard. And I'm like, oh man, there's geeks out there who need to hear this stuff, right? Because it radically empowered my life. You know, and this is something that people keep asking me, because, like, when I talk about the program, right? The program is 9 weeks or is 9 tools to radically empower yourself. And they're like, what does that mean? And I'm like, I'm talking about going from, like, puny Banner to the Hulk, right? I mean, like radically empower yourself, right? Smashing through limitations, choosing for yourself, where choice becomes your superpower. And this
Yeah.
is so important to acknowledge, you know.
Yeah.
And for me, I want to acknowledge everybody who's been part of this journey, all of the geeks in the Facebook group who have offered new comments, who have pushed back when they think I got it wrong, who offered different, like really great, what else is possible point of views, right?
Yeah.
Like I say this about something, and they're like, oh, well, what about this then, right? And everybody's
Yeah.
just like, I'll one up you, man. Like, let's all level up together. And like, this has been a huge, tremendous year for me of leveling up,
Yeah.
and it's just been amazing to effortlessly give these tools to my kids who have absolutely no resistance to them, right? Because
Yeah.
this is their life. So
And they're fun. I mean, that, you know, just to look at that too, right? They're fun. Like you're taking, this is truly you being you, changing the world. You're taking these things that you adore, right? Superheroes, mythological figures, right? And you're taking it and blending it in a way where it's just super fun. And you can really engage with them in a way that is so different than when it's all about, you know, we're going to be conscious and we're going to get it right. And it's like, no, we're playing here. We're actually enjoying having fun and bringing in the tools of modern times, ancient times, all of it. And putting it into a context that can work for you, for me, even if we use them in different ways, because we're
right.
different.
So, you know, even like it's so funny for me because like I don't think that there is actually an adequate parenting book in existence, right? I really don't, right? Like not the way I think parenting can be done, because like when I tuck my kids in for their bedtime routine, they ask for a story. Like night before last, no, last night, Caspian asked if he could hear another story about the gods, right? Because I've been telling him story about Thor and Loki and about Odin and about Zeus and Apollo and about Perseus and Medusa, right? And they're just so into it, right? And
Yeah.
so like, last night I told them the story about Icarus and Daedalus and about Icarus flying too close to the sun and the wax in his wings melted and he falls down to earth.
Yeah.
And like I walked out of that room going, you know, some motherfucker in ancient Greece just invented a story to tell his kids to like always listen to your father, right? Like that's the story, right? Like always listen. Daedalus is like, dude, don't fly too high, you'll melt the
Right.
wax. And Icarus is like, I'm gonna go for it. I feel great. I'm gonna go for it. And then like doesn't listen to his father and then plunges to his death because the ancient Greeks were not having this kind of like, oh, he skinned his knee and walked away from it kind of thing. Like you will die if you don't listen to me. Like that's
Yeah.
it's such a blast to realize like what kind of tradition I'm carrying on here, and then like these are less parenting lessons in mythology form. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, and how cool is it that you are living in Italy and able to bring those stories to life in modern times, you know, and possibly even in an apartment, you know, where some parent was telling that story for hundreds and hundreds of years to their children.
Yeah, no, dude, it's no joke because I mean, like the one of my true loves is statuary. These giant like marble statues, and they're all over Italy, you know. And so it's brilliant for me when I tell my kids a story about Poseidon, and then they see a statue of the guy with the beard holding a trident, and they tell me who it is.
Yeah, that's
Like,
awesome.
they're 5, 5, and 3, man. Like this for me, I'm just having the best.
Yeah, well, and how cool that, you know, you can even see that as you're walking to the park or walking down to, you know, get some fruit at the corner store.
Yeah.
So, you know, and that is one of the things really, you know, we're talking about these tools for empowerment, right? And you're inviting people to them, and you have this really neat way from my point of view, this really neat way of accessing all the different things that we can be aware of. And how we can apply these in ways that can make sense to us, especially depending on what's fun for us. Like, yes. But in addition, like, you know, not for nothing, like you didn't just sit in a vacuum and come up with some ideas on how to create a program. Like you've been living this, and, you know, you like a year ago, you were still in Florida, And, you know, like another month from now, maybe, or so is when you guys moved.
We just passed our 1 year anniversary. So
You did just, okay.
Yeah.
So it was just now a year that that you picked up, and you all just were like, okay, new normal, let's go live in Italy. And, you know, and you're there, you moved to Ireland for a spell. I mean, your adventures as a family have been amazing while continuing to grow your business. I mean, you travel internationally, intercontinentally to you know, to create videos for, you know, commercials, industrials. You also do entertainment pieces. So like you're doing all this, creating all this. So not only is this just like a fun little program, but you're also like, you're inviting people to the things that you've been using and that have been really working in your life to create so much.
Yeah.
So can you even get over yourself? No.
Well, you know, the thing that I'm grateful for daily, honestly, is I'm grateful that I chose it, even when it's hard, because, you know, we all have our moments where, like, you know, we'd much rather things were easy, right? We'd much rather, you know, have the creature comforts of home or our entire family backing us up so we could leave the kids with them for an hour and get a nap, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's absolutely times where, like, it's difficult, you know, but for my kids, their normal is a life of adventure and never-ending choice.
Yeah.
And this is something I'm beyond grateful for, you know, that, like, I'm grateful for the people who a year and a half ago, when we first told people we were going to be doing this, they were like, you can't just go travel into Italy with 3 kids and a pit bull. And I'm like, tell me what I can't do. That always ends well.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, you being a superhero yourself and all. That's right.
That's right.
We can have the cape, no cape discussion another time. So yeah, so you've really been using these, and you know, what are some of the things, like when people are choosing the program, you know, what are like, are they just kind of like, I'm not feeling so great, or is it like, oh, I have this thing that I'd like to create, or is it like, oh, I just don't even know, but this turns me on, and let me just go play in this playground? Like, you know, who is it really that's coming and playing with the program?
You know, I think that the program originally, when I designed it, I think I called it something like Getting Unstuck or something like that. And it was my awareness that so many of us are functioning from these conclusions that we can't make certain choices because, and we can't make those choices because, and we can't do this because, right?
Yeah.
And all those causal incarcerations, like, you don't have to be back to have a causal incarceration, right? You've already got them. Right? And so all of the things that are holding people back, from judgments to distractor implants to the causal incarcerations, right? To playing small, to, you know, to their point of view creating their reality, right? And so what I wanted to create, the invitation that I wanted to be for people was, I didn't want you to choose something for an incremental change, right? I wanted people who were ready to radically empower themselves. Right? Because if you look at the automobile, it's not an incremental increase from the horse. You know what I mean? Like, they just didn't add more horses. Like, I'm going to build something so new.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
50 years from now, we're going to put somebody on the moon with it, right? I'm going to create an engine where I blow stuff up in a container, and then I use the energy in that container to move the thing forward. And, like, literally 65 years later, we put somebody on the moon with that, right?
Yeah.
So I'm looking for the people who are ready for the moon launch, you know? I'm looking for people who are like, I'm ready to choose it. I don't want this anymore, but I don't know the first step to take. And I'll show you.
And ready to just launch and jump. It makes me think of, you know, if we're talking about superheroes, it makes me think of, here at our house, we just went through all the Iron Man movies again recently. And it's like that thing where he's like running and he just like launches himself off the big metal thing into the air and just trusts that all of the many pieces of his suit are going to like fly onto him while he's midair, and actually then he's going to just keep flying and save the day, right? And it's that thing of like, you know, if he was standing up there just waiting and hoping to see, well, like, you know, triangulate where the pieces are, and, you know, did I do the math correctly, and am I going to end up on the ground, or is it actually going to all come together? He doesn't. He just whoosh, and they're midair, all the pieces come together, and he just goes. So you're just really inviting people who are willing to just launch and to trust in themselves in the process.
Well, thanks. But you know what? I do want to point out that part of the program is that you get access to a private Facebook group with other people who are doing the same thing.
Cool.
And every week there's a live coaching call with me where you can bring your questions, you'll get your clarity, you know, and even if you don't have a question, somebody else might ask a question that gets you clear on something. That's so important, you know, and I'm just there to facilitate, you know, I'm there to make this journey easier for you, and to you know, to kind of give you something that I've gone through before, or that Thor has gone through before, or that Iron Man, like you just said, right? Like this thing where, like, is it all going to work, you know? But the thing that I love about the example that you just showed was that Tony Stark didn't trust the technology. He trusted himself.
Because he is Iron Man.
Right, he is Iron Man.
I mean, he says that so many times. He's like, I am Iron Man. Like, it's not the suit.
Right?
I am Iron Man.
It's not the suit.
Yeah.
Right? I love that.
Yeah.
Right? You can take that suit away from me. I will build another one, because you can't stop me from being
I'll build a better one.
I'll build a better one that'll go hunt down the first one and destroy that one. How do you like that? Right? Like, that's totally Tony Stark, right?
Yeah.
And like, that can be all of us. You know, it's just a matter of acknowledging that that possibility lives within you. It's not something other people can give you. It's something you've got to choose for yourself.
Yeah.
That journey to choice can be scary for some people, but that's why I designed the program.
Cool. Oh my gosh, Frank, so exciting. So we are going to have the links to all of that in the show notes when that gets posted. It will be posted on the Facebook page here, and then also in YouTube. So that will be available to you. And Frank, it has just been so much fun playing with you. always a good time. What's that?
I've missed you so much. This was so much fun.
I know. Well, we'll have to have you back again next season and see where you continue to go with all of this. It's really cool, really fun. So thank you guys for coming. For those of you who were live, so fun to have you on here. Really appreciate you being here. Yes, hearts back at you. And everybody watching in the future, thank you for playing too. All of you can continue to co-create these episodes, and it just makes it so much fun to make them. So if you do like them, please do subscribe to the YouTube channel. Please like the page on Facebook. And as always, let us know if there's something or someone that you would like to play with more, and we'll see what we can conjure up for you. Okay, well, thank you so much again, Frank, for joining us. Everyone else out there, we adore you. Keep choosing, and we'll see you next week. I wonder what we'll discover next.